Sup, this is a True Floater. I'm doing another video, a commentary video. I haven't done, one of those in a minute, and we're gonna be talking about two companies, Mafex, Medicom Mafex, and Tamashii Nations. And to be very specific, so we have a good idea of what figures I'm gonna be comparing. We're gonna be talking about pretty much the SH Figuarts line, because Tamashii Nation, they have multiple different lines. They sell statues and figures and whatnot. We're just going to focus on the SH Figuarts line, and be even more specific, we're going to focus more on the superhero based figures, or pretty much stuff that's more humanoid, like the anime figures, all that, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, Jujutsu Kaisen. We're not going to focus on that because those are towards a totally different target market, if I'm being honest, and that market of people like myself expect different things than, like, the Spider-Man and the Batman figures, I would say. And for Medicom Mafex, everything. We don't really have to be too specific with them. They make pretty much the same figure. So, like, the occasional Ultraman, but and they make a lot of superhero stuff, so they'll be a bit more easier to pick with. But what was I about to say? Just to let you know, I just remember I was about to say, I don't really have a general opinion on this. The point of this video is kind of spark a conversation between the community and what they think is better, and what they, just put their own opinion out. I'm just going to put down the obvious, state some opinions, some traits of both of these lines, why one is really good and why the other is really good, and what both of them suffer. And that's me. I'm just kind of just sparking ideas and an open dialogue. So whatever you get out of this, I hope you get something new. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, and it's always been a running conversation point for SH Figuarts, to be more specific, is the face sculpts. In my opinion, I do think the face sculpts of SH Figuarts for a very long time have been kind of hit or miss, more often a miss. Especially, like, you look at the Captain Americas, the Thor figures. Like, the last, I think, good face sculpt they've had was the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man one. That had a really, really good face sculpt. I was a very big fan of that. That's like one of the only good ones I can think of, though, on the top of my head. Besides that, I think a couple figures before that was like the Thor Love and Thunder figures. And those face sculpts were not really that great. When the helmet was on, it was better, but like the face itself, wasn't the biggest fan. And I don't know why they struggle with the more real life face sculpts. They just do. Unlike their anime counterparts. Again, we won't go too deep, but that may be another video for itself. But their face sculpts are great on that side, but they struggle with real people. Mafex, for a long time now, I've always sided with their face sculpts over SH Figuarts. It's sometimes one of the main reasons on why some people get Mafex figures, because the figure itself may not be that different from their own version of a take of a character, but the face sculpt will be a little better, and that alone is enough for some people to go ahead and get Mafex figures. And they consistently are pretty good with it. It's hard for me to think of many figures that has a bad face sculpt. Like, the only time maybe is when they focus on a character that isn't a cinematic adaptation, is a comic book character, and even then they do a pretty good job. There's only one character I think of in recent time that the face sculpt kind of had people just not fucking with it, and that was the Captain America one. And yeah, that Captain America head sculpt is something else. It's pale. It's a weird looking one, but more often not, they seem to win in that category. Now, this may arguably be the most important distinction between these two companies, and that is the figure itself, the body mold itself. And I wish I could take some figures out, but I've collected a good fair share of Mafex figures and SH Figuarts figures over the last couple of years. I won't lie to you, I recently started getting a bit more SH Figuarts figures, but for a long time I've been getting Mafex figures for like maybe a good 4 years now, so a lot longer than SH Figuarts. So I only have maybe one superhero based SH Figuarts figure, and that's the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. That being said, Wikipedia is a thing, so I can look at a lot of the pictures of the other action figures and give my take. And because the majority of my SH Figuarts figures are anime, so, and I can see why some people have their own preference for both. I would say the body sculpts of the Mafex figures look a bit more natural, not as many weird cuts, and mainly those cuts per side in the crotch region. You know, those kill it for a lot of people, and why they and I'm sorry, when I'm talking about the crotch region, like the cuts for SH Figuarts are like in that region, just stops a lot of people from buying them. And it was for me for a while, until I realized the articulation for SH Figuarts are a little better, in my opinion. Not saying the articulation for Mafex figures aren't, but you can tell that Mafex, they take aesthetics and the look over articulation. While SH Figuarts, they can still look like really good figures, but they focus a bit more on articulation than aesthetics. And that's why you can get some pretty crazy poses out of a lot of the, especially the Spider-Man figures, compared to the Mafex figures. And I was posing my Mafex Scarlet Spider the other day, and I've noticed it is a little bit more difficult to pose around compared to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That one's like a dream to pose around. And you know, those are the key differences between the body modes. And even though it depends on what you care more. Do you care more for articulation or for the aesthetics? You know, I don't know which one I'm going to pick. I like both. I'm a big fan of both. I know what I'm expecting when I get one of these figures from both companies. So, I don't know. But I have noticed that about the body sculpts of Mafex and SH Figuarts. Alright, now the final point, I may have a couple more after this, who knows if I can think of some, but this may be the most important one, or second most important. That's the pricing of these figures. And you can argue both of them sometimes just go crazy. Both companies have raised their prices over time, but it also depends on certain releases. I would say SH Figuarts, I said I was going to give a clear distinction of which one's better, but I'll give one here just because it's kind of obvious. SH Figuarts is a lot more flexible with their prices, to the point where it's sometimes fair and sometimes surprising. Compared to Mafex, they don't budge. It is usually about the same. If anything, it may be worse. So like the cheapest Mafex figure you will get like from an American website like Big Bad Toy Store or other online sites, like it's usually gonna be around that $90, $100 price range. Sometimes I remember I bought my Endgame Iron Man. The total, from what I remember, was like $150. It hurt. And there's some that are even more expensive. Not saying that SH Figuarts they can, but a lot of the times, the most expensive figure you will see will be roughly around like $120, which is still a good $30, $40, $50 cheaper than the most expensive Mafex figure. The only one that's an exception was recently the Griffith figure, which is $150 on Big Bad Toy Store. I think it's cheaper actually on other websites, and it's only that expensive because he comes with a whole horse as an accessory. So I'm not really too mad at that. I get that it's a giant horse. Like, you can use that horse for other things. Yeah, that's cool. No articulation though, but if it had articulation, that would be insane because you're basically buying the horse, not Griffith at that point. But like I the other day I bought, I think, Gohan last year for like $50, maybe less. I bought a Goku for $30, and I bought a Naruto for $30. And they're gonna sell some One Piece figures later this year, which I'm very, very, very excited about. You're gonna sell Luffy that looks good, and you're gonna sell him for roughly around $30 as well. Obviously, with shipping, it'll jump up to $40 or something. But the fact that I can get a top tier figure with great articulation, great detail and sculpts, and a good looking head sculpt with a decent amount of accessories, at least more accessories than any retail line like Marvel Legends or McFarlane, even battling against Valaverse, or the Action Force line, it will have just as many accessories and will be around the same price, maybe a little bit more expensive with just overall better figure. That alone is like crazy to me. And yeah, the pricing is just, it's obviously SH Figuarts depending on what figures you get. Now there's gonna be an occasional like spot, like this. Ah man, I'm sorry, I broke my own rule. I'm talking about anime figures, but we're supposed to be focusing on superhero figures. So let me change it up real quick. I want to talk about a couple action figures. Like, you can buy, I think there was an Endgame, a No Way Home Spider-Man for $50, $60 a while ago. Obviously, there were other figures that were still around the $80 mark, $90 mark, but that's still good $10 cheaper than the average Mafex figure. And if you're lucky, you can find some for $60, $70, $80. Everything I just said is still cheaper, roughly, than most Mafex figures you will ever find. And if you go online, you may find them for even cheaper. Now, I will say online, I think when you buy them from like straight from Japan, they're roughly like the same price. Don't vouch, like, you can check for yourself, but when you're buying from like other more common websites, the case is usually SH Figuarts figures are a bit more cheaper. And even at their most expensive point, like that new $20.99 Spider-Man, that is still like $120, which is still, you know, cheaper than the most expensive Mafex figure. So that's the only point where I would say is Figuarts may win. But even then, if you still prefer Mafex, which honestly I still love Mafex. I get mainly more Mafex figures than I do SH Figuarts. So who knows? It depends on your love for whatever figure line. But that is it for this video. Just want to put out, you know, that discussion is out there. If you want to have one, it's there. You want to comment on it, on why you think Mafex could be better. Actually, before this is over, I have one more point. QC issues. Both lines have them. It's hard for me to, again, I don't really have a winner on this one. I don't have a winner for most of the points I have, but both sides definitely have QC issues. Most lines have QC issues. It just depends on the customer and their experience with how many they've had with them. Personally, I haven't had many crazy QC issues. Like I'll use the anime figures in this example only because they're all the same. They're all figures, and those are the majority of the ones I usually get are anime based. So in my experience, a lot of the figures I've gotten, some of them don't, but a lot of times the arm will pop off with ease, and then it keeps popping off, and it's hard to attach. With Mafex figures, I've only had one figure that had a QC issue, and that was my Ben Reilly Spider-Man, where the leg popped off. But the thing is, you would have to put some effort into popping it off, and even if it did pop off with ease, sometimes you just pop it back in, and it's still pretty easy to pose around without it not coming out. Like, you can work around it. While for SH Figuarts, when that arm pops off, it is loose as hell. It's gonna be hard. Like, you're gonna have to do some customizing to fix it, which I really shouldn't have to do. It's a bit of a pain to pose them around when that problem comes. So I will say, in my experience, I've had more QC issues with SH Figuarts figures than Mafex figures. Now, if it's different for you, okay. But yeah. But if that was, now I'm done. If y'all enjoyed this video, you know, like and subscribe. But that's it. So yeah.